Welcome to Your Path to Nonprofit Leadership, the weekly podcast that features the very best in career development in the nonprofit sector. I'm your host, Patton McDowell, and in addition to podcasting, I'm a leadership and mastermind coach, a strategy and fundraising consultant, a speaker, and an author. Check out my book. It's also titled Your Path to Nonprofit Leadership, and you can find it and other resources and programs we offer at pattonmcdowell.com. By the way, if you want to help make this podcast even better, maybe you have an idea for a topic or a guest, go to the show notes for this or any other episode and find out where the podcast survey is located. You can also go to the podcast page at pattonmcdowell.com, fill out the survey, it won't take long, and you can help assure this podcast continues to meet your leadership development needs. Well, I know you're going to enjoy this fantastic conversation with Regina Moody, who's the president and CEO of Holy Angels and has had a remarkable nonprofit leadership journey. Much wisdom, as you might imagine, as the result of 40 years, and yes, you heard that right, 40 years at this single organization. Holy Angels is in Belmont, North Carolina. It's a wonderful organization. And in an age of the Great Resignation, I'm sure you're thinking the same thing I was before this conversation. How do you stay at one nonprofit organization for 4 decades? What kept Regina engaged? How did she build and retain the kind of talent and infrastructure and donor base to turn a small one-building nonprofit into its current 17-building campus? And maybe most interesting of all, how did she know when it was time to step away? And what is she doing to assure that this transition will be a smooth one and not lose the momentum she's worked so hard to maintain? Lots of wonderful lessons here, regardless of where you are on your nonprofit path. Regina's got great advice to share. So don't forget to check out the show notes. This is episode number 168. You can go to the new podcast page at pattonmcdowell.com, and you'll find out all of the resources we discussed, as well as more information on Regina and the great work she's still doing through Holy Angels. And its website, by the way, holyangelsnc.org. Without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Regina Moody. Regina, thank you for joining me on the path.
Patton, thanks for the invitation. I look forward to talking with you today.
It's exciting to have this conversation. You have had a remarkable career in nonprofit leadership, made even more remarkable by the fact you spent 40 years at a single nonprofit organization. And I know the wisdom and experience you've gained during your time at Holy Angels is going to benefit our listeners. So for that, thank you. Let's start with this kind of provocative question, Regina. You and I had a little conversation before. As you look around at nonprofit leadership in the sector, what is the biggest challenge that you see and that perhaps concerns you as you think about nonprofit leadership?
Well, and I'm sure that this is an answer that many people would share, and that would be, well, we just came through a pandemic and we think we're almost through it. But, setting that aside, I do think that the world of nonprofits is of course changing and growing and challenging. Partly, there's lots of competition for donations and contributions, as well as the world of technology and the challenges that we face. It's great to have technology, but you also have to be able to manage it and be present on it in order to share your mission. So, I think recovering from the recession certainly is a big challenge. Sharing mission and values are really important, I think, for people to know who you are and what you do. And then there are great nonprofits in this country, and they are growing every single day. And to that, I think there's more competition for the dollars that may be available that people might be willing to contribute.
All great points. In fact, you lifted up one of many that I think will resonate with our listeners, but technology. In fact, I had another guest, a guy named Bill Connors, talk about, he thought that was one of the most significantly the increasing amount of leadership time was going to be devoted more to technology. So have you found over your recent tenure that you're spending more time in kind of in the technology space or managing technology, I guess?
Yes, absolutely. And really, here at Holy Angels, we recently added a position, a chief position of development and marketing with the experience of digital technology in an effort to kind of expand our reach into the world of technology and the online presence that we feel like we need to have. I do believe that technology and being technology savvy, if you will, is going to be one of the requirements for nonprofits to be successful in the future.
Exactly right. And you and the Bill are making the same point. Doesn't mean you have to necessarily get into the coding or the weeds of technology, but you sure have to manage it, don't you, if you're going to lead your organization forward?
Yeah, that both, for internal business operations, if you will, and communication within your organization, but also externally. That's where people are getting lots of information online, whether it's a YouTube or a Instagram or whatever it may be. So we have
Right.
really worked hard. Websites, keeping them up to date and current is, it's one of those requirements today that maybe wasn't in existence 40 years ago when I started.
Exactly. You've seen an evolution of that for sure. And of
Absolutely.
course, we're going to call to our listeners' attention through the show notes of this episode some of the great material, and both digital and in kind of hard copy, if you will, of Holy Angels. But let's pause there for a moment. For our listeners that don't know, Regina, what is Holy Angels? Talk about the organization you have in fact led.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I, always love to talk about my passion, and of course, Holy Angels is my passion. And our roots go back to 1955, which would put us at the 67th anniversary year of Holy Angels this year. And the way we got started was that the Sisters of Mercy, who began their community here in Belmont, North Carolina, had several ministries and missions. Many may remember Mercy Hospital or St. Joseph's Hospital in Asheville. The sisters ran the Catholic schools and various types of other ministries. But Holy Angels grew out of the fact that one of the sisters that was operating a day nursery on the campus here in Belmont, where Sacred Heart College used to be, and the Sisters of Mercy Mother House, was operating a day nursery for babies and young children of parents who worked in the mill area back in the day of our beginning. The mills were very, very populous, as it was a textile community. And so people needed places for their children to be taken care of and be safe. And so that's what was happening. It was called the nursery, and it was a little engineer's cottage here on campus. And a baby named Maria was born to a mother who was 16 years old. And she, the doctor who delivered Maria, knew that she had pretty significant challenges. She was had spina bifida and hydrocephalus, and really at that time was not expected to live. And so the doctor referred Maria's mom to Sister Patrice and asked Sister Patrice, will you take care of my baby? And Sister Patrice said yes. And, that was the beginning of our love story. So 66 years later, here we are, and we've certainly expanded our services and our age, as well as our ability to now care for children and adults who have severe intellectual developmental disabilities and delicate medical conditions. And we provide a whole array of services for the people that we serve, the children and adults. Our youngest is 2 years old and our oldest is 80. I certainly didn't think we would be serving a lifetime of, or a span of a person's lifetime when I started here, but that's how we've grown and developed. And so, our goal is to provide opportunities for people to be the best they can be and to reach and develop to their potential, whatever that may be. And so the Sisters of Mercy helped start or began Holy Angels. It's one of what they call a sponsored ministry, and it's continued on today with a variety of programs and services to meet needs and to help people be the best they can be.
It's so impressive. And again, I know that our listeners are going to check it out because, of course, you have built a foundation on which Holy Angels is going to continue. And we'll talk more about that because you're not leaving exactly either. And you're going to assure that But let me go back to the beginning, Regina. Why did you get into nonprofit leadership in the first place?
Well, honestly, it was not my career path. I had gone to my undergraduate degrees in social work, and I was hoping to get into the medical social work field. And at the time when I graduated from college, I started to work at Mercy Hospital to learn the medical field, and was hoping to get into a position. Unfortunately, I had to go home. My father was a New York City fireman and was injured on the job. Fortunately, he was okay, but I went home to see him. When I came back, the position was eliminated because of budget cuts, and that seems to be a reoccurring
Yeah,
theme
theme,
in
right?
the world. But so from there, I decided, well, my minor was education. And so I talked to the head of the education department at Sacred Heart, and she directed me to a place that was called the Mary Ellen Nelson Center and said, you should consider taking a position over there for a short period of time in order for one of the teachers there to go back to school and get her degree. So I was hired to teach, and it was supposed to be just for a half a year. And I had 12 adolescent boys that were had intellectual developmental disabilities, and believe me, I was as green as grass. But when I got into it, I just really loved it and loved the work. And so for 6 years, I taught special education, and I went on to get my master's degree because I was offered a year-long contract, and that's how I began my career. And honestly, I had the opportunity to work with young children to adolescents to adults, and then was very involved in Special Olympics and Camp Sertoma, which was a camp for people, children with disabilities, and I ran that. And in the meantime, I had gotten, as I said, my master's, and I always wanted to get into administration. And so I was, I really believe God's hand has been in my career and my life
Sure.
from the beginning. And a very good friend of mine and mentor said, I know you love the field of disabilities, but there's this principal position open at St. Michael's School in Gastonia, and I think you ought to consider it. So I did. I considered it. I went and was hired, and I served as the principal of St. Michael's School in Gastonia for 3 years. This same friend, mentor, and a person who's impacted my life tremendously said, I know you love St. Michael's, but Holy Angels, at the time it was called the nursery, has a need for, at the time, the position was called executive director. And I know that you love the field, and I know that you love administration, so I think you should apply. So there was a national
Wow.
search going on. I applied and was hired. And honestly, I was kind of green. I had experience in education, and I had experience in special ed and administration, but I had not had experience with the more severely in children and young children that had severe disabilities and had some medical fragility. So, but it was the best opportunity for me. And my job at that time was to move the program from a custodial model of care, which meant that the children were receiving lots of love and great care, but there was really no program or education going on. And the reason for that is that the laws had not been put into place as they were in the late 70s. And so as laws changed and children who had any type of disability, we were required to receive a free and appropriate education. And that kind of moved the needle for the field of developmental disabilities. And for me, it was an opportunity to move Holy Angels from what was a custodial model to what we have today as a developmental model of care, with a whole continuum and array of services. And Holy Angels being a nonprofit, I didn't really have much experience in fundraising or raising money. So I would say to you that much of my early years were learning how to do the job, so to speak,
Right.
how to raise funds and run programs and get accredited and all of those things. So it's on the job training, but I had a real desire to learn. And I was very, very fortunate that I had some great mentors and people that were willing to give me guidance and advice.
Well, you touched on something I was going to ask you about, and you said it beautifully. Well, one, I have to acknowledge that you and I share a little bit. Certainly not to the extent you do, but I started my career working for Special Olympics. So the
Sure.
population that you serve is one that I was fortunate to work with as well. And again, we talk about the role of mentors, people in our lives at the right place at the right time. But I was going to ask you, Regina, as you moved into that leadership role at a relatively early age,
Yes.
um, was it largely self-taught? Did you find that it was like you learned on the job, or were there certain resources or things that helped you become a successful leader?
Um, there was a good majority of learning on the job and kind of trial and error. But the other was that I recognized that there were many great nonprofits in the field that were doing good work. And so I began to visit all over the state of North Carolina, different programs that were residential and developmental and had a lot of different things going on. So I tried to learn as much as I could, but well, and I say both in state and out of state, and serve within the community, in the disability community. So I learned on the job here at Holy Angels, and reading and kind of researching and learning what needed to happen. But it also was going and visiting places that were providing similar services, and colleagues
Nice.
that I met along the way, and professional organizations, and all of the things that you have to do to bring it together. And then, obviously, one of the challenges I think that is always in the CEO's purview is, working with the board of directors, and how does the CEO and the board, how do they work in tandem in order to provide the guidance and leadership and policy and governance and all the things that are required. So that was new for me. And the fundraising part was very, very new, both from a governmental funding, federal and state dollars,
Right.
and how to access that, to raising dollars for Holy Angels, because our mission was so strong. And from the very beginning, Holy Angels was known, and I'm not sure, Patton, if you grew up in this area, but many people knew Holy Angels or the nursery through Case Gary, who was a Charlotte columnist, and shared the story of the nursery back in the early days. So
Oh, wow.
there were people that knew about us because Case wrote about us. And then Jim Bishop was a syndicated columnist, and he did the same. And then Sister Patrice, who founded Holy Angels, the first founders, if you will, really was able to engage people that were interested in sharing the news about this very special place called the nursery.
Yeah, you all have cultivated well the local media, and of course people have adopted Holy Angels in many respects, haven't they? The meaning of Holy Angels, and are willing to share the great stories. And but I want to go back to one of the other things you said, Regina, about working with the board. And you're right. I have lots of conversation with nonprofit leaders. There's a complexity to that, right? The for-profit folks typically have one boss, but those of you in the nonprofit sector, you have a group of bosses. But did your interaction with the board evolve or change over these 4 decades, or how would you describe specifically how you created such a positive board CEO dynamic?
Yeah, I will tell you that early on it was very, very challenging, because it was a major change to take this place that was taking care of very fragile babies and young children, and kind of open up the place to the world, because people were advised, to go on and live your life, and we'll take care of your baby. And because these babies weren't expected to live. But, fast forward, science has changed and medicine has changed. And many of these babies that may have been born with some type of disability or genetic problem are living today, some, not all. And so for the board, it was trying to adapt to the changes that were required for Holy Angels, and I'm referring to Holy Angels, but the name, as I said, evolved over time to be Holy Angels Nursery, and then today Holy Angels. But basically, there was a requirement on the part of the board to be supportive and adapt, and most of the board members were very supportive and willing to adapt. But there were some that really had a little bit more of a challenge because of the major changes, but knew that we needed to do it. So, I worked with them, and part of it was driven by some regulatory requirements that we had to comply with, and there wasn't a choice. We had groups coming in to evaluate what we were doing, and to be very honest, I started on July 1st, which would be tomorrow, 40 years ago, and at that time, we didn't have the I guess you would call it the accreditation requirement from our local mental health system, and that was one of the responsibilities I had, was to move our program as it was to be in compliance. And I didn't know when I started that it was going to be, the review was going to happen in December. So I had 6 months to get everything kind of in order and hire staff and things like that. And so that was challenging, but we did really well. I mean, bringing the staff along was challenging in and of itself, because these were people we were asking to do other things in addition to care for these little babies and young children.
Yep.
So God's hand was in it all, and I know that I probably will say that more times than not, just because I believe that Holy Angels was meant to be who we are today because of the needs that we are meeting and serving.
Well, and again, you managed extremely well, transitions at different levels, and you're right. You had to grow as the accreditation requirements grew, and I guess the blunt reality is sometimes not everybody stays with us, right? Board members, volunteers. But let me ask you about another group that you have been very successful, which is recruiting and retaining talented staff leaders. I wonder, what do you look for, Regina, when you're hiring folks? Obviously, whatever you did paid off because folks are staying with you.
Yeah, well, I think most importantly is, I think people who are in leadership here at Holy Angels, they have to have a willingness to serve and believe in our mission.
Yep.
And, many of them, including myself, were called here. So, we're called to this mission. And if we're not, I don't think that you can stay with it as much as, maybe another type of work. They have to be willing to work in a team. They have to be hard workers. They have to be willing to do, and this is very simply said, but to do whatever it takes.
Right.
And you're operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There are going to be many things that you have to do. And I think the other part of that is be willing to lead by example. I'm a big proponent of, no job is too small for myself or for anybody in the organization. And I've expected people to do whatever it takes. And if that meant, we have a flood in the lobby and I'm mopping the floor, that's what it is.
You modeled that, didn't you? Yes.
Yeah, yes, honestly, that leading by example is so critical. And I expect that of all of our leadership team. And the other thing I think that's important in the nonprofit world, people, I don't believe necessarily are coming to make as much money as they can. I think they're being called to the work. Obviously, I think there's a justice issue in terms of trying to compensate people well and all of those things. But I have been a real proponent and have done this frequently, is promoting from within. If somebody has been working here at Holy Angels and they truly meet the qualifications of the job, both by professional skills and also personal skills, then they'll have an opportunity to grow. And really the majority of our executive leadership team now has been promoted from within. Who now will be the CEO tomorrow, has been working here for 24 years, and she started as a social worker.
Yeah,
So
it's such a good example. And And doesn't that communicates to the potential talent pool for Holy Angels that if you go there and work there and are successful, you will have an opportunity to grow and advance, right? And I guess that's
Absolutely.
paid off.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I think investing in people is so important. And certainly for myself, our board over the years has been very willing to invest in our training and, certainly myself, from a nonprofit, certificate, to, the leadership, programs I've been involved with, in my own, position, but then for others as well. And I think it's so important. You hear the term often, grow your own, and especially in today's
Yes,
world,
yes.
if you can grow your own and those people benefit the organization because they have the history, they've been part of it, they feel like they're making a difference. I think you can really develop and secure the future of any organization. But respect is so important, and treating people with dignity and respect and confidence that they can do this. Not, I don't know that I have a person here on my staff that has come here to work and had the experiences necessary to do their job entirely from our frontline staff through the entire organization.
To that, but that's a tribute to you've created a learning and development type culture, haven't you? That you're going to
Yes,
get there, you're going to help them get better.
right, exactly. And I think that's another investment that nonprofits need to do for their people and however many people they employ, because they're there, we hope, to serve a mission, whatever that mission is. And so I think it has to be somewhat of a win-win, that they're going to gain both personally and professionally within the organization and be recognized for the work that they do.
Yeah, well put. And again, like many things you're sharing, this is something our listeners can ponder as they consider their own organizational leadership and style. And in fact, something else I thought was really impressive, Regina, because many of our colleagues listening, certainly education, healthcare, human services, are faced with accreditation processes that their reaction is often to groan as the deadline for accreditation or the review occurs. But I don't know if you love the accreditation process, but it seems to me you've embraced it in a way that has made Holy Angels better. Maybe you could speak to that.
Yes, absolutely. It's a requirement, right? And so whether it's an annual survey, and believe me, we have anywhere from 50 to 60 different governing, bodies, not governing, but different groups that come into Holy Angels to evaluate what we're doing. And then over time, of course, as we've grown and our programs have grown, we've had more people. But, I think it can make us better. I'm very proud to share with you and the group that may be listening is that we just completed our fifth 3-year national accreditation with CARF, the Council on Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities. And we, the best you can do, like a perfect score, is no recommendations. And we had no recommendations, which put us in the top 3% of all nationally and internationally accredited organizations.
Wow.
And I will tell you that was a proud moment for all of us. And all of us worked very, very hard to achieve that. We have been accredited for the past 12 years and have always received a 3-year accreditation. But it really, I think, speaks to quality and commitment to the people that we're serving and the people that work within our organization. And within the same week, we had one of our programs, our largest program, which is our intermediate care facilities. We have 48 people that we serve 24/7. And that program around the same week time was also approved with 0 deficiencies for I think it was the 4th year in a row, which is the best you can do. So quality is important. I've always felt like to set the standards high or set the bar high, and that we will work towards achieving. Not that we are going to exceed every time, but we've had some very, very great surveys, audits, accreditation, things like that. But of course, the national accreditation is by far the biggest. Over 1,300 standards we have to comply with.
Good grief. Well, congratulations. That is remarkable, and you and your team are justifiably proud of that accomplishment. And I love how you've turned what, instead of dreading a process, you've almost turned it into an aspirational objective, right? Hey,
Yes.
let's not just endure this, let's excel. And it's put you at the top, literally, of all organizations of your size and type. So that's fantastic, Regina. Let me jump to another topic that you learned on the job, as you admitted earlier in our conversation, fundraising. I remember you made a comment to me in an earlier conversation about the importance of cultivating the next generation of donors. Talk about what you've done to do just that.
Well, I will tell you this, that, fortunately, Holy Angels had a very good base when I started here, because of the work that was done in the first 25 years. But, I saw it as a responsibility and really a requirement to build on that base. And so we, over the years, when we started, of course, we didn't have any fundraising software or anything like that. And we started with people that really didn't have a lot of experience. I had one person that was working in development, and we started with a spreadsheet, to try and manage our donors.
All right.
But I think that, part of it is building relationships, ones that you may already have, and then new ones that you can kind of bring along by sharing your mission, and hopefully they would want to support it. It's a little bit different today because there are so many different ways that nonprofits are trying to raise money. We have tried to do it in a variety of ways. Obviously, when I started, we did not have any events.
Right.
So we started with events, building a base. For this year, in September, we'll have our 31st annual golf tournament. And it's one of those kinds of events that continues to bring back people that played year after year, or people that they know that they bring. And it's been a very solid event for us. So events are good. They're very labor intensive, but it's a good way to kind of start to meet people at a level that might be fun and comfortable for them as we try to share our mission with them. But as we built on, it's kind of like making sure that you nurture the people that have been supporting you for years, and look at ways to expand your reach, or to cast a bigger net, if you will, to bring more people into the potential interest of supporting our mission. And I think you have to be accountable, you have to be credible, you have to perform at a high level, and you have to be able to share your story.
Yes.
And people need to see it in action, and you have to be good stewards of whatever gifts you receive. And so I think that the generation of today is much more savvy, perhaps in some ways, of how they want to spend their money or give their money, and what they expect back for it. And a lot of it is what I've already said, the credibility, the quality, the making a difference, knowing that they're helping a great mission.
Well, that checklist you just reeled off, it strikes me as right on target, and how you have been very thoughtful in maintaining these relationships, cultivating and stewarding these donors. So in fact, they will stay with you even as you transition in your literal role with Holy Angels. That generation of donors is likely going to stay, thanks to you and your team's good efforts. It leads me to this question, and I think it's in the back of many of our senior executives listening. It is, when is it time to retire or to transition, or whatever term is used? How did you know, Regina, when it was time to make the move?
To be very honest, I think it wasn't like that I had a plan or anything like that. I think it's important to have the energy to do the work, because nonprofit work is definitely requires energy and commitment. But for me, I really feel like that I've given a lot of leadership to this organization, and it's kind of time somebody else can step in and take the reins, and I hope that the foundation that we've built will carry us forward. Our plan, to retire. I mean, part of it was my husband retired 2 years ago, and we
Yeah.
have two little grandsons that one is three, and the next one will be two this month or in the month
Right.
of July. So, like many people say, I want to spend more time with family. We moved to an over 55 community, and there is all kinds of activities going on. So I'd like to be able to do some of that.
Nice.
I love to travel. I like to play golf. I like to ride a bike. And so, just to kind of have some time to do some of those things that I haven't really been able to spend the time doing.
Good for you.
And then from that standpoint, I wanted to be effective and impactful, but intentional with the plan for me to move out of the position of CEO. Holy Angels is very, very complex. We have a lot of different things going on. I think, when I started, we had one building. Today we have 17 different.
Oh my gosh, yes.
We had 35 staff and 35 residents. Today we have 83 residents and 350 staff. And our budget went from less than $500,000 to almost 20 million. So, and with that, a good 25 to 30% are contributions and donations we have to raise. So, I wanted to help assure stability for Holy Angels and to have time to plan that out. And one of the things that I'm so grateful to our board for was their willingness to allow me to work with them to develop a strong succession plan and put the action items in place in order to, as much as we could, assure the future of Holy Angels.
That's it. Well, and I was just going to comment on that because, again, like everything you've done, it's been thoughtful. You didn't roll in and give them a 2-week notice and just announce that you're going to depart. You were thoughtful. In fact, I believe, Regina, you told me this was like a 3-year plan. Is that right? I mean,
Yes.
there was some detail to that, right?
Yeah. I did a lot of reading and research on, how do you, probably about 5 years ago, I started thinking about, okay, what would happen if I wasn't here? And so I
Right.
started to really look into, what are the best models and, they vary, of course, in both in the public and the private sector and how things are done. But for us, the executive committee of our board was very involved from the beginning, as I talked about, trying to develop a plan and present some options, to them. And we had several meetings over the past 3 years where we actually put on paper the plan based on the information that I had researched, as well as what they wanted to see. And they wanted to be sure that Holy Angels was going to carry on and be both financially sound and mission strong, and having the right people on leadership, as well as, dealing with the many challenges. So we were very fortunate in that and intentional, and it was really a blessing for us to have somebody who was on our staff and very well respected and appreciated for her gifts, and that's Carrie Massey, who will assume the CEO responsibilities of the position tomorrow.
Right.
And she really was, I think, the right person. She's got a great love and passion for this mission, and very, very competent and skilled, and has been preparing for her position, as you know, both on the fundraising side and the nonprofit leadership side, and been involved professionally. Some of the boards and committees that I've served on, as I rolled off, Carrie was able to step in. So we both have been very, very intentional about the process.
Yeah, it's again impressive, and I imagine their listeners thinking about that. One, hopefully they will be intentional too, as they ponder a transition, to make sure that you don't lose, frankly, the momentum and the foundation you built. Talk about, though, your new role, Regina. I guess How do you remain supportive of Carrie and the leadership without, though, everybody still turning to you every time a decision comes
Yeah,
up, you
yeah.
know?
Well, a couple of things, when we, this is a dual role that I've served from the very beginning. The title was executive director, it changed to president and CEO
Right.
early on in my career here. The Sisters of Mercy have the approval process with a recommendation from the board for who the president slash head of ministry is. And so in our process, we looked at that, and I knew that that the role of president was one that, and our board knew this, that I will still report to the board for the next 6 months, giving Carrie a chance to kind of get her bearings in the day-to-day CEO responsibilities, which are massive.
Right.
And then so I'll do that for the 6 months, and I'm working in the area of fundraising and marketing, public relations, special projects, and I'm working on a building project for the future. And
Nice.
so that's kind of what I'm going to do in my role as president, and serve the board for until the end of December. And in August, the board will be discussing the recommendation and appointment of, or the appointment of Carrie to the role of president. That will go to the Sisters of Mercy for their review and hopefully approval. And they typically, want to assure that the head of ministry slash president is somebody that they feel confident with, which we already know that they've been very much in the loop on this. The board has been in the loop on it. So I think that, the kind of natural progression, but doing it in an intentional, patient way has been really helpful, because Carrie is assuming many of the responsibilities really for the past year and a half.
Right.
We've been working side by side in meetings, in leading meetings. She's assumed leadership of one of our teams as I've continued to lead the executive team. So we've kind of moved through a process of steps, and I think the same will be true. So as she moves into the dual role of president and CEO, January 1st, I will move into the role of director of the building project, and be available for consultation if she needs me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to kind of make it practical, my office has been in the main building for 40 years, and so I moved to another small office building on campus.
Okay.
She moved into my office and conference room, and we were able to appoint a COO who's been on our team for 5 years and has served in the vice president of HR. So he is moving into Carrie's office. And so we made these physical moves. We've made some
Right.
positions into some vice president positions. And to be honest, I think that the gradualness and the plan of this really has and will serve Holy Angels well. And that has been my goal and the board's goal from the beginning, to have a good plan and work the plan, and change and be flexible if you needed to do that, and we did on certain things. But as of today, we've completed the milestones required that the board had approved regarding Carrie moving into the position tomorrow.
Yeah, it's not surprisingly very thoughtful, well thought out in several takeaways. One, I love the way your new role is clearly defined, so people understand. Of course, you had great value in everything you did, but now you're going to turn your attention to the building project and some external activities, which are only going to benefit Holy Angels. And I love that your description of the kind of the gradual transition. In other words, it wasn't just kind of a July 1 and everybody dropped everything and started something new. You've guided your successor over the course of this year and a half. And that, to me, there are lessons there that certainly can benefit others that are pondering a transition. But Regina, this is an impossible question given the list of accomplishments you could offer our listeners, but is there anything you're most proud of as you ponder everything you've done that might, in
Um,
fact, turn into a lesson for our listeners?
I think really the ability to um, kind of identify needs and then develop a plan to address them. Um,
Right.
and so as a result, we've been able to really develop programs and services to meet the needs. And then I think the people that, both the people we serve and their families, as well as the staff and the volunteers and the board, all of the people that I've had the opportunity to impact, and to kind of bring them along to this, mission that we have here in Holy Angels. And I think that our, reputation speaks for itself. And, I think it's something that as a nonprofit executive, one of our duties and responsibilities has to be to protect our brand and our reputation by acting and living, morally and ethically in terms of the responsibilities of the position. And
Yeah.
so I think that for us, I want to be clear that yes, I've been in the leadership role, but as I say to my staff all the time, that there's not one job here at Holy Angels that can be done by one person. And I really feel like that this has been a team effort, certainly building trust, first and foremost with the families and the residents or the children and adults we serve, with the staff, with the board, with the community. I also think it's important to be a good corporate citizen. And I think it's important to be a leader in the community. And, I certainly have had many opportunities to serve in our local and community and state. And it's been, really a privilege. And you kind of have to have the whole package, if you will, I think, to be a successful nonprofit in this world today.
That's great advice, as you have offered throughout this conversation, Regina. For that, I'm grateful. And again, thank you for being willing to go down memory lane, frankly, and share your journey, because I know it will be thought-provoking for listeners who are somewhere else on the path to nonprofit leadership. If I could add one more request to my list of questions, how about a book? Can you recommend a book that's been meaningful to you
Well,
that maybe would be meaningful to our listeners?
yeah, I probably have three that I really like over my career. One, of course, is servant leadership. I think that you have to be a servant first in the
Yeah.
nonprofit world to lead. And certainly Robert Greenleaf's book on servant leadership is one that I've had the opportunity to be part of, some training and some activities locally and statewide. So that's one that I think never gets old, really.
Yes, good one.
And then Daring Greatly, I think, is one of those kind of books that probably could challenge us all, and one that I think can really play a very important role in the part of an executive or a leader in a nonprofit or in any business, to be very honest.
Yes.
But the one that I practice the most, and my staff will tell you, is a very simple book, and it's the QBQ, the question behind the question.
Nice.
And I use that all the time because I think it's a great way to teach people how to evaluate, analyze, and think about what happens if I do this. And, I certainly have practiced that in my entire career. If I make this decision, then what happens?
Yes.
And I would say to any nonprofit person who works in leadership or as part of an organization is there are so many questions behind the question. And if you practice that, you'll make good decisions or the best decisions based on the information that you have.
Wonderful recommendations, all three, but you're right. I think it was appropriate you finish with that one. And that is certainly something I know our listeners will want to check out if it's not already on their bookshelf. Again, I will encourage listeners to check the show notes for this and all of the resources and information you've shared, Regina, but specifically, where can people find out more about you and the great work at Holy Angels?
Well, we've been very fortunate and blessed that we've had some great media coverage with this change that's coming. 40 years is a long time for anybody, and to be in the same place, as you know, Patton. And so we have a website that is constantly being updated, and we have created a Legacy of Leadership page on our website at www.holyangelsnc.org, along with many other things that are on our website that might be of interest to people, everything from our fundraising events to our programs and services and things like that. And one other thing I would mention to nonprofit leadership is to don't be afraid to dream and to be innovative and creative, because here at Holy Angels, we've been very blessed in that, in addition to operating a nonprofit, we also have 4 businesses that we operate that provide meaningful employment for some of the individuals we support who have a mild to moderate intellectual disability. So that model is rather unique, and I'm very, very proud of it. But it's certainly one that I think any nonprofit, if you work hard and are looking at innovative and creative ways to do things that can enhance your mission, I think there are many opportunities out there.
It's fantastic. Thank you for lifting all of those programs, of which you should be justifiably proud. And congratulations for a remarkable 4 decades of leadership at Holy Angels. Lots of lessons that you have been generous in sharing. I will encourage our listeners to check it all out on the show notes related to this episode. And Regina, thank you again for joining me on the path.
Thanks, Patton, and good luck to you in your work. And I appreciate the opportunity to share. And certainly I will say to people that time flies when you're having fun.
A perfect way to finish. Thanks again.
Thanks, now. Have a good afternoon.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Regina as much as I did, and came away with some practical ideas, whether you're building your nonprofit organization at this point or you're trying to assure your efforts will only be elevated if you step away. Don't forget about the show notes. They are on our website, pattonmcdowell.com. Go to the podcast page and find this episode, number 168. You can find out more about Regina, the resources we discussed, and you can also learn more about that great organization called Holy Angels. As always, thanks for sharing this episode with someone else on the path. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe. Just go to the podcast page at pattonmcdowell.com and you can hit the follow button and assure that you won't miss out on any of our weekly episodes of Your Path to Nonprofit Leadership. They come out every Thursday, and if you like this episode, click on the episodes button. Look around, and you might see some other episodes that will interest you, or you can simply search by episode title, topic, or guest name. Thanks again for all you're doing in the nonprofit sector, especially right now. Keep up the good work for causes that are most meaningful to you. I'll keep bringing you content that can help you do it even better. Have a great week. I'll see you next time on the path.